So a little bit about myself. So I am an 18-year veteran of the mortgage servicing industry. Spent my entire career in mortgage servicing. Currently, Vice President of Customer Statements and Letters for U.S. Bank Mortgage Servicing. So been at several different companies in the past, but been there since August of last year. So just over a year underneath my belt. So. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, and I want to thank Sarah Schladeroff with Venture Solutions for the opportunity. She gave me the invite, so thank you. This is a lot of fun. Hopefully will be educational for you all. We're going to talk about what it means to keep customer communication human. What it means to keep customer communication human. If you read the session description, you get a good feel for what we're going to talk about here. But before I jump in, if you are the tweeting kind and you hear something you like, feel free to share it. I would encourage you to share it on Twitter using these hashtags. Now, I noticed the hashtag earlier, Skip, that you shared was a little different than Xplor 17, but I think either one will work. So Xplor 17 and human communication. They all work. They all work. There you go. All right. So with that, some of you, maybe most of you, have heard the story of the young man who was driving down an old country road, and he sees an old woman walking along the road and says, "You know, it's not a real good area here. I think I'm gonna offer her a ride." So he pulls over and asks if she wants a ride. She says, yes, that would be great. She gets in his car, and the guy says, where are you going? She says, I'm going to the liquor store. He says, all right, great, let's go. So they start driving, and then a few minutes later, she looks over at him and says, you're passionate. The guy's like, what? I'm sorry? Silence for the next couple of minutes. Then she says it again, you're passionate. Guy's thinking, this is really weird. Probably some kind of serial killer here. I shouldn't have picked her up. Then she says again, you're passionate. The liquor store's back there. Ba-dum-bump. All right, so point being, how often do we hear something completely different than what the sender intended? Right, with communication? Well, at least according to Bernard Shaw, the Irish playwright, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place, right? Communication problems, there's jokes galore that I poured through, and I found that one. But it's a fact that oftentimes we think communication is sharing information. Right? Sharing information, when communication is actually more about listening, right? And receiving. And so we're going to get into that. And I want to talk about some of the challenges we've had at U.S. Bank in regard to this, as well as what we've done to overcome some of those challenges. Hopefully, probably some of the same challenges that you all have had or are having right now. And I'd like to actually have a kind of a dialogue here. So I'd hopefully get some discussion going, because again, communication is about listening and receiving, right? So and giving. So with that, anybody seen the Liberty Mutual insurance commercial, where the woman's talking about how when you get rear-ended and you need a tow, and you call your insurance company and they say, well, yeah, check your policy on page 5. It'll tell you whether you're covered or not for the tow. Well, then you went to the policy on page 5, and what did it say? Congratulations, you're covered for the tow. No, it said, what did it say? Who knows? Anybody seen this commercial? Blah, 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 right? Why is that the case with communications? Now, granted, we're talking about an insurance policy here, okay? So there's some, right? It's not a your billing statement is ready for viewing online kind of message, but point is, it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating, especially when the call center tells you to go check the policy, right? That's All right, so what about our internal jargon that we use when we communicate with each other internally in our companies, right? How many times have you felt with customer communications that there's just too many moving parts and we're trying to boil the ocean? But what we really need to do is get buy-in with the higher-ups so that we can truly shift our paradigm, peel the onion back, leverage best practices, create synergies, grab some low-hanging fruit, and make communication scalable and cut and dry. Of course, in order to do that, you have to touch base and reach out to your colleagues to identify cross-functional impacts, right? Ultimately, you have to leverage learnings and takeaways so that you can get your ducks in a row and really take things to the next level, but only in the right swim lane, right? If you aren't in the right swim lane, you might have to take things offline or just punt. Hopefully you aren't out of pocket, otherwise you'll miss the window of opportunity. Who drank the Kool-Aid on this stuff a while ago, right? Why do we talk this way in our companies? And does that not impact or influence what our external customer communications look like? I think it does. So, with that, here we have a very frustrated woman. I want to take an informal poll here. Show of hands, what problems do we typically have, do you typically have, that I typically have with customer communication in our organizations? And I'll list some out here, and raise your hand if you've had any problems with this. Way too much. We're inundating customers with stuff. Okay? How about a letter that it's 5 pages. If it's 5 pages, it could be 10 pages. Just way too much content within a single piece of communication, right? How about confusing? What are we really asking the customer to do here? Is it clear? Irrelevant, untimely, maybe too much. Maybe we're inundating them with paper or with electronic communications, whatever the case might be. What if it doesn't? So you've got a large organization, and at U.S. Bank, I'm part of the mortgage servicing division, but we also have wealth management, we've got credit card division, other divisions in the bank, and what if the communications in mortgage servicing don't necessarily line up or conflict with, from either a branding standpoint or a content standpoint, with those other parts of the bank? Yeah. All right, what else? Anybody else have any suggestions? What are you struggling with? I want to hear from the crowd here. Anyone willing to share?
I can share with just what I hear from potential customers.
Sure.
Customers is that you want to be that person, that human connection to your customer, but your data is in a mainframe and is on legacy support that you don't even know how to get there.
Right.
So how do you go from that to having the right human connection? And you only you have this in one business unit, but you have it in silos in 7 different business units.
Yes. We're going to talk about silos. That's great. Speaking of corporate jargon, right? Silos. Yeah. So why does communication get like this? Mary, you just mentioned one reason. But in our organizations, what are the obstacles that we face in our organizations as we try to get communication out to folks that really means something, that's really human? And I've got a definition for human communication. I'm getting there. Bear with me here. But first I want to ask, what obstacles do you have in your organizations today that prevent you or maybe just aren't allowing you to get the right thing out the door at the right time, or maybe less of something, that kind of thing? What are you seeing? What about too much internal bureaucracy?
About a basic one like it's a Spanish customer calling into an English call center.
Oh, great. Great. And do we have a channel for that customer, right? Yeah. What else? Other thoughts, other ideas?
Legal requirements?
Oh boy. Legal requirement. Yes, and then compliance. And once legal opines on the risk, right, then you have to get compliance and say, well, I don't know that we're, and Matt being an analyst, that's their job, right? They're looking at every single detail, and thank God they are, right? That's why we need them. We need to make sure we're compliant, but it creates obstacles, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. What else?
One of the obstacles I was going to bring up in the presentation was talking, and Matt's vision is spot on. The biggest challenge we see with our customers is when all of these applications were originally put together, they're still in a legacy world that they didn't even know about PDFs, never mind being interactive HTML or anything else like that. So to be able to get the messaging to the right channel, you have to be able to work with the messaging, and a lot of people aren't able to do that.
Yeah.
They're not able to get that to that place.
Yep. Great point. Sir?
The one I see is what I call the lack of a common cause. Internally, it's all about, is your customer happy, customer experience, customer journey, yet you have these departments within the company, and I know you're going to talk about silos, but they have their own little worlds, they have their own little budgets, they have their own, and they don't communicate. So
Yeah.
they don't know what that common cause is.
Exactly. Common vision, common cause, and maybe it's because we don't have a centralized borrower or customer communication team or leadership structure, right, that can help drive that. Who's taking the lead here, right, with our customer communications? What's the overarching vision? Absolutely. What else? Anyone else? Yeah.
The IT department and inflexible systems and too many databases.
Yeah, okay. Kind of back to the silo thing a little bit, but yes, technology is limiting. Absolutely. Sir? Okay. The formatting and the size, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. So, how about this one? This is one we struggle with a little bit at US Bank. I run the customer communication team, statements and letters for mortgage servicing, and I have a team of letter librarians that support the development of new communications as well as updating of existing communications for the business lines within mortgage servicing. So, oftentimes though, not often, it's not often, but sometimes we find that we, as letter librarians, are actually developing that particular department's business processes because we have a question for them about what should go in the letter. And well, I'm not quite sure what our process is on that and that kind of thing. Well, we kind of need to know because I need to know what to say in the letter to the customer, right? So what we end up doing is we find ourselves in a position of actually developing the business processes or maybe even just digging out the procedures from wherever they're published, right, to see what they say. That's a point, an obstacle for us anyways at US Bank. So, but yeah, it buries you and your customer communication. So with that, I want to just say, let me ask a question. What if it could be different? What if it could be different? In fact, I think it can be different. The obstacles are there. They don't magically disappear when you bring in a VP of customer statements and letters, right? But you have to deal with them. But it can be different. And we're starting to see the tide turn at US Bank Mortgage Servicing, and it's challenging. I won't lie to you. There are obstacles that we are dealing with every single day, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And my job here this morning is to try to convince you to take this journey with me and believe that it's possible. Not only should our communication be human, but that it can be human. And what do I mean by human? Well, simply that it's meaningful, that it's simple, and that it's clear. That's it. Like these two folks here having a warm conversation over a cup of coffee, right? Why can't our communication be like that? especially with I don't know how many financial institutions we have in the room. Raise your hand if you're financial. Okay, a lot of us. Yeah, difficult, right? Because there's legal requirements we got to meet. There's certain language we got to use. But I think still within the legal compliance framework that we have to deal with, it's possible. It is possible, and we're doing it. So what I'd like to do in our remaining time is just walk through a couple of examples of how we've been able to do this at the bank, and get your thoughts on that, and maybe some of the things that you've struggled with as well. So the first point I'd like to make in keeping customer communication human is you have to create a culture of belief by bringing positive energy. Let me say that again. You have to create a culture of belief by bringing positive energy. Okay? Now I'm talking about the basic fundamentals, and this really applies to any department and any function of any company, not just customer communication. So I'm kind of backing the truck up a little bit here from the strategy and the omni-channel and digital and all of that. I want to talk about the fundamentals here. Number one, and we've been able to make some changes by bringing a culture of belief, creating a culture of belief by bringing positive energy. So what do I mean by that? Look at this guy. What kind of a corporate culture do you think, if he's an employee, what kind of corporate culture do you think he's reflecting right there? A little skeptical, right? Maybe a little disillusioned. Well, we'll see what the big wig's gonna do about this, right? Yeah? I mean, yeah, and we've all got them. We've all got them, right? But chances are, if you got a critical mass of that kind of culture, and when I say culture, what I'm talking about is a real simple definition of culture. It's simply the beliefs and the behaviors that determine how a company's employees interact with one another and their customers. Okay, so you see the link there? How they interact with one another and the customers. So there's a link between there, going back to my earlier point. But chances are, if you have a sort of a skeptical, standoffish kind of culture, then your customer communications may also reflect that same thing. Okay? So I want to talk about a very specific kind of corporate culture. I mentioned it, a culture of belief. A culture of belief. You got to believe it's possible. That's the first step with anything. You know, you can bring in the big shot who's got all of the expertise about the latest, greatest thing, but if you don't have the leadership, and really not just the leadership, but at all levels of the organization, believing that it's possible to make the improvements, you're not going to get anywhere. Peter Drucker says what about culture? Anybody know? He says culture eats strategy for breakfast. He probably said that 30 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago. But it's true. You can have the greatest strategy, but if your culture doesn't reflect and doesn't support and undergird that strategy, you're out of luck. So you got to believe. And really, culture is, to me, my personal opinion here, is the factor that determines the success or failure of any business. Whether you've got 50,000 employees or 5. It's about culture. All right, now, hang with me here. I know I'm kind of going off from communications and keeping it human, but hang with me. So, around that, what kind of energy are you bringing every day to the workplace? Is it that skeptical, standoffish kind of energy and we'll see kind of thing? Or is it, we can do this. We can do this. You know what I mean? What kind of attitude, what kind of intention, what kind of energy are you bringing to work every day? There is some fascinating research on this topic that I wanted to bring in here. There is a professor in Japan by the name of Dr. Masaru Emoto who did some studies on water crystals. And it's pretty amazing stuff. What they did was to determine and see what the impact of intention, attitude, and energy was on the material world. And what they did was they spoke certain words to water. I know it sounds crazy. Follow me here. Spoke certain words to water. They showed pictures, certain pictures to water. They played music to water, and they even prayed to water, both positive and negative. And then they froze the water, and then they looked at the crystals under the microscope. Let me show you what they found. Results are pretty amazing. So this is "You Disgust Me." Doesn't look very good, does it? I mean, it's not symmetrical. There's really nothing beautiful about it. It kind of looks like a soldier of some kind almost. Really odd. This is "You Fool." They spoke the words "you fool" to the water, and this is what they saw under the microscope. This, however, they had the water in a jar with a label on it that said the word "truth." This, I'm going to play a song for you. This is Edelweiss from The Sound of Music.
Edelweiss, Edelweiss.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Every morning you greet me.
This next one, Mozart, Symphony Number 40. All right? So the point is, it really matters what kind of energy you're bringing to the workplace with your interactions with folks, with your internal stakeholders, with your customers, with yourself even, right? So, back to the point about keeping customer communication human. What does this have to do with anything, Matt? All right, I'm going to give you a real simple example from what we've done at US Bank. So we started digging into our billing statement practices as well as our volumes, and what are we doing? Well, we were sending, and still are in some cases, sending multiple statements to customers, to the same customer, per month. Why were we doing that? I mean, it's like beating people over the head with paper. Here you go, here you go, here you go. Multiple triggers, and nobody could tell me why, how we had it set up. Why did we have it set up that way? Well, here's some data. So we dug into it and found 35% of our accounts in our entire servicing portfolio received 2 or more statements per month. 11% receive 3 or more statements per month. And 3% receive 4 or more. Could you imagine getting 4? I'm sorry if anyone here has a mortgage with US Bank, but if you've gotten more than one statement, I'm working on it, I promise. But not, at the very least, it's tone deaf, right? I mean, how is that human? How is that meaningful? What value are we providing to our customers? Yes?
Do you mean that they have 4 accounts, so they get 4 statements? Do you mean the same statement 4 times?
1 account, 4 statements in a month. 1 mortgage. Yeah. No bueno.
2, by the way.
Say again?
It's expensive also.
Well, exactly. Back to Matt's point earlier about customer experience and cost, right? We're going to dig into that a little bit more as well. So we're incentivized to reduce the amount of paper going out, right, from both a printing and a postage cost standpoint. But in this case, it's also better customer experience to reduce the amount of statements going out. So back to creating a culture of belief by bringing positive energy. There are a lot of tenured folks at the bank. A lot of, we started digging in and asking questions, and essentially the answers I got was, it basically amounted to, well, that's how we've done it. I mean, that's how we've always done it, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right, well, maybe I just need to wipe the slate clean. Let's look at what the actual compliance requirements say we have to do, 1 per month, right? And let's just include all the activity, all the transaction activity on that one statement. Why do we have to send them a statement every time they, we send them when they make their payment, when a payment gets applied to their account. If they don't make their payment, we send them when they hit the late charge date. So if they trip the late charge date, they don't make their payment by that time, we send them another statement. If they get a payment correction made on their account, if there's any kind of reversals and reapplication of their payment on their account, that triggers another statement. Yeah, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. So we had to believe, though. That was the first step, was that we had to believe that we could do that. Everybody was afraid, because that's how we've done it, of changing it up. And I said, guys, no, we don't have to do it that way. Let's look at the requirement. It's 1 per month, and let's do it. So we worked with and are still working with our statement print vendor, Venture Solutions, to make this happen. But we started out with reducing the number. We're not quite down to 1 per month yet, but we're getting there. But sending a lot less out per month now, a little more human, right? Don't you think? Questions, comments on any of that?
What was the cause and effect of doing that?
The cause of doing that.
Well, maybe more the effect of what you remedied.
Gotcha. What was the effect of doing that was the question. Less complaints. We had customers, it wasn't like our top complaint category, but people did complain about it on a fairly regular basis. Why are you, and I think some folks probably just gave up, right? Okay, that's how they do things, and so less complaints. Yeah.
I would also think that it significantly reduced the number of calls to your call center.
That's a very good point. We did see that. Less calls to the call center. Yeah. So, to sum up this first point, create a culture of belief by bringing positive energy to everything you do. Every email you send internally, every meeting you participate in, whether you're responsible for customer communications or not, I'm guessing most of us in the room here are, in our respective organizations. Every thought you have, bring positive energy, create that culture of belief. And you can do this even if you don't have direct reports. You can be an individual contributor in your role and still do this, all right? So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point, in terms of how we've been able to keep the humanity in our customer communications at the bank, is listening to our employees. Now, this gal here doesn't look like the boss is really listening to her ideas about how to improve things or resources, tools that she needs to get the job done, right? Looks disillusioned, disengaged. You got to listen to your employees. Ask them what they need to do the job. And again, if you don't have a team, if you're an individual contributor, listen to your colleagues. Listen to your vendor partners. They've got ideas. It's just that nobody's asking to hear from them. So, there is some research, some of you may have seen this, by J.D. Power and Associates that says the best way to engage your employees, to keep them engaged and to retain them, is not about foosball tables and Keurig machines and M&Ms in the break room. It's about listening to their ideas as to how processes could be improved and then acting on them if they make sense. That's employee engagement right there. And back to the link between how employees relate to one another and how they relate to your customers. That's it. That's it right there. Listen to your employees, ask them what they need, ask them how processes can be improved. The opposite, some of you may have heard this, Sam Walton said once that the way that management treats the associates is exactly how the associates will treat customers, right? You gotta have that culture. It's all kind of tied together with the whole culture thing, but listening, your leadership, if you're in a leadership role, this is very, very important. Listen to your employees. So, what does this have to do with keeping customer communication human? So we had a letter librarian who, I mentioned I've got a team of letter librarians that support the business lines. A letter librarian who got the message. And she started digging around in the letters, just the letters that she's responsible for updating and maintaining for the business lines. And it happened to be collection letters. So we send the various letters out to customers, remind them of their payments due, and hey, you're now past due, things like that. And some of them we send certified mail at $8, $9 a pop. Well, when you're sending thousands of those every month, that really adds up. And so she said, hey, why do we do this? Why do we send this certified? Is it required? It may be required, I don't know, but I'm just asking. And so we listened and said, you know what? Great idea. Great idea. Let's look at it. So we dug into it. Got with our compliance and legal partners. Turns out this particular letter was not required to be sent certified mail. So we switched it. We switched it to something called certificate of mailing, which is higher than first class but lower than certified. Much lower cost per piece. Okay? Now, what's the connection here with keeping customer communication human? So what we did was the savings that we are now realizing from this effort, and this we started to see the postage cost dropping in April, May timeframe of this year. Big savings, almost $1 million annually. So with that savings, just a fraction of that, we were able to bring in some additional resources, outside resources, to help us evaluate every single piece of communication that we have at U.S. Bank Mortgage Servicing and look at it from a process standpoint. Why are we sending what we're sending and when are we sending it? But also looking at it from a content standpoint. What can we do to actually simplify the content, make it more meaningful, and make it more clear for customers? Simple, meaningful, clear. In a word, human. And so we are actually about almost finished with that project. We started that earlier this year as well. The business is in the process of implementing those recommendations. And it's been amazing to see that all of that started with this cost savings idea from a line level employee who shared an idea. And she was right on. So I want to share some examples of what we've been able to do with the communication. So not only are they looking at what we're sending and when, but what can you consolidate? What can you get rid of? You may have stuff in your inventory that's outdated, or do we really need to send 3 letters as part of this process when you could send just 1? So we've seen anywhere from 25 to 30% reduction when we look at consolidation and retirement opportunities by having this entire inventory evaluated. And that's exciting too, because that means less stuff going out the door, more meaningful to customers because they're not being inundated with paper or electronic communications, as it were. So here, just very simple examples of what we've been able to do with this. So we have, in mortgage servicing, you have lender-placed insurance. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yes. So you have certain letters that are required to go out at a certain time to notify the customer, hey, we've noticed that you don't have homeowners insurance, you don't have hazard insurance. So here's what one of those letters said, just a snippet. If we are unable to obtain, this is further down in the letter, if we are unable to obtain evidence of insurance, we must secure lender-placed coverage at the borrower's expense. Now wait, this letter goes to the borrower. Let me read that again. If we are unable to obtain evidence of insurance, we must secure lender-placed coverage at the borrower's expense. I'm the borrower, duh. Right? Not. This insurance is significantly more expensive than a borrower-purchased insurance premium. Not very conversational. I mean, it's not horrible, but it could be a lot better. So here's just very simply what we changed that to. Unfortunately, if we're unable to obtain evidence of insurance, we must secure lender-placed coverage at your expense. Right? Just a couple of words difference, but brings it more in line, and really it's kind of it's one of those bad news things. I mean, there's no good way to deliver bad news. I guess there is a good way to do it, and that's what we try to do here, right? This insurance is significantly more expensive than an insurance policy purchased on your own through a local insurance agent. All right, we didn't explain that in the prior version of this letter. So trying to be more helpful, more meaningful, more clear, right? So that's one example. Another. Yes, go ahead.
We had a customer with a similar example, and they would say that when we first sat down with them, we said, well, by the time we send the fourth notice, we have to then force insurance, and then typically the borrower cancels, and then they have this whole mess on their hands. So the other question became, is to you, as we're saying to them, why it's the communications that are going out at the beginning before we have the discussion about forced insurance, why aren't those clear to not get to this event? Why are you sending four? Why can't you stop at one? Right? Making sure they understand. Did you see that kind of thing in your process as well?
And do it earlier, I think. Yeah, earlier on. Yeah, there are some compliance rules around this that we have to send these hazard insurance LPI letters at certain points. It's a RESPA reg, but that's the overall goal with all of our communications is let's see how we can get something more meaningful to the customer in their hands sooner so that we don't end up with, because we've got business processes related to, okay, now we've got a customer who has reached their limit. We now have to force place insurance. Right? And there's whole processes that are related to that. So if we can prevent that from happening to begin with, that's more efficiency pickup in other parts of the business. Yeah, great point.
Yeah, that was auto, but it's the same story. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's all through the clear communication, so people understand what
That's right. That's right. Other questions, comments on that? Yeah, Mary.
One comment too. I mean, when you talk about the use of, I think you mentioned it in the beginning, is the use of jargon, right? Industry jargon.
Yes.
Within the communications, and when we talk with our customers around our process like this, we talk about the use of plain language and things like using the word borrower, and your customers don't understand that. And some of the conversations we've had with internal teams where on a statement you say credits and debits or some industry jargon that everybody that you talk to within your organization understands, but the end client does.
Yeah, internal jargon.
Conversations around what else can you use? Let's use money in and money out. Let's use something that's very clear to the end recipient, and it's amazing what a difference it makes.
It's great. It's a great point. Another example I can share with you is our paid in full letter when a customer pays off their mortgage. That's a pretty significant event, right? Now, I mean, granted, probably a lot of that's refi, right? They're just refinancing, but they pay off their mortgage. But for the customer that is truly paid off their mortgage and they're not going to get another one, that's a big event for that customer. Well, we didn't say it. The communication that we sent out didn't align with that at all. It was very plain. you paid, blah, blah, blah. What we did was we just added the word congratulations to the beginning of the, very simple. Congratulations, you just paid off your mortgage. But simple things like that just make it more human, more connecting, more meaningful to the customer. So other stuff that we've been able to do in terms of the content of the letters that we send out is standardizing our not just our branding within mortgage servicing, but and when I say branding, I'm talking about the logos, but I'm also talking about the content. I'm talking about the language within as well. We have a suite, and our corporate communications team built this, and so it kind of converged with the project that we had to review all of our communications. It was perfect timing at the bank, but we're putting standardized openings into, and we have a list of things that are considered, suggested or acceptable, but none of that was standardized in mortgage servicing, and so we're working through those changes right now. But it's slow going, but we now have visibility into it. And again, back to the point here, it all kind of stemmed from listening to an employee who had an idea about something that allowed us to then bring in additional resources to help us with this effort. Huge. Okay, so let's move on here. I want to get to the third point. All right, silos. All right, we all got them. But third, to keep customer communication human, you have to build and maintain positive relationships with everybody, both within your organization as well as outside your organization, including your print vendors. Very, very important. And I'll give a great example of why that's important here. But I mean, how typical is this? You got groups working together, and they're doing their thing. They've got their processes. This is the way we've always done it. Whatever the case may be, maybe the technology, the databases are siloed, right? It's not working together. Develop relationships, because you never know when you're going to need to call on somebody for help in a pinch. So what does this have to do with keeping customer communication human? How about Hurricane Harvey? All right, August 24th, Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Texas. It stayed for a while, finally dissipated September 3rd. 90 confirmed deaths. Economic losses estimated between $70 and $200 billion, with a large portion of the losses sustained by uninsured homeowners. In a word, devastating. Now, we had some basic disaster protocol structure set up at US Bank, but we didn't have as much as we should have. And so we were creating processes and protocol as we went here. We obviously had warning. We saw it coming. Everyone saw it coming. That's the magic of our modern weather system. We can see what's coming here. But essentially, we have a disaster area. It's called a disaster area relief notification letter, but it's a letter. It's a paper letter that goes out in the mail through the Postal Service to somebody's mailbox out on the street. Problem with Harvey is nobody's home, right? They're evacuated. They're out of there, and if they are there, certainly the post office isn't getting through, right? So how do we communicate with our customers here? Well, you could do a call campaign. That's if you have their cell phone numbers, right? You could do email. Yes, email. Right? There's an idea. Everybody's got their phones, and most people have their email connected to their smartphones. So that's essentially what we did. We had to stand up an entire email protocol for a disaster response. And so not only did we have to, back to the point about relationships, not only did we have to get emails created, draft them up, get them approved internally, legal compliance, branding, email team, communications team, all the hoops we got to jump through internally. And then we got to turn that over to our vendor so that they can program it in. And then we got to get samples back from them to make sure that what they've programmed in is correct, and that's part of our existing process with any letter that we do. Lots of steps involved in the process to stand up a new piece of communication. Well, we got it done in 2 weeks. Now, there were some exceptions to policy that we had to get along the way. Point is, there's no way we could have done that without the relationships that we had. I mean, I'm talking literally me on the phone with the head of compliance for mortgage servicing default saying, I need your help, Leslie. I got to get this thing approved. I don't have time to get it through our CAT system. It's our compliance approval tool. It's a software system that tracks all of our correspondence and the approval steps and where it's at in the process and that kind of thing. I need you to look at this now, and I need your approval by email because I got to get this thing out. And that's the kind of stuff we did. Now we've gone back and we've put it back into our compliance approval tool and made sure that we're following protocol and all of that. But because of the time crunch that we were under, we got it done. And what we did was on September 12th, we sent 24,000 disaster area relief notification emails to our impacted customers. And the subject heading was simply, U.S. Bank wants to help you. Very simple. Above the fold, the message was simple. Call us at our dedicated disaster hotline for assistance. And we had a phone number there. That was another part of the protocol that we had to stand up. We didn't have that, so we had a dedicated queue in our call center for those customers calling in on that number. Below the fold was some additional information that included steps to take to file an insurance claim, as well as payment assistance options and homeownership counseling and that kind of thing. We also suppressed a certain number of our collection and payment reminder letters, as well as some of the foreclosure demand letters. All right? Human. Now, if that isn't fun enough, on Monday, September 18th, I was notified by our Senior Vice President of Default Counseling, Scott Rodeman, that they would be hosting an on-site assistance event in Houston at a Houston area hotel in 3 days. And his request to me was, Matt, I've got to get an email out to these customers to let them know of the event. We're going to do Facebook posts and we'll put stuff on Twitter, but most people, they've got their email inbox on their phone right in front of them. I got to get an email out in 3 days, a brand new email. Okay, that doesn't happen. Given the amount of approvals and the amount of departments that have input into the communication that we've got. Again, all for good reasons, right? We have those protocols in place to reduce and minimize risk to the bank, but in times like this especially, it creates obstacles because it makes things longer. It makes the cycle much longer. So Scott said to me, he said, I know what I'm asking here, and he said, Matt, I need a miracle. Can we do it? I said, Scott, we're going to get it done. We got to take care of these folks. So what we did was the evening of Wednesday, September 20th, through the help of our Venture Solutions partner, we sent 24,000 on-site assistance event notification emails to our HARRI customers. This is a look at some of our team that was at the on-site event there. We were there for 2 weeks. The subject heading of the email was U.S. Bank On-Site Disaster Assistance. Very simple. The message was very simple. U.S. Bank is holding an event to meet with our customers who have been impacted by the recent hurricane. Our representatives will provide in-person assistance for mortgage, credit card, and auto loans. And then it gave the location, dates, times, that kind of thing. One of the managers that was at the event here relates this story. I wanted to share this story with you. It's pretty powerful. Amanda Faraday Scott said one of our customers came in, Miss Rodriguez, came in on Monday, September 25th. She was having a tough time because she applied for help through FEMA and didn't get anywhere, she said. We set her up on a disaster forbearance plan for her mortgage account, which is essentially a plan that allows the customer to skip payments for 3 months. It also suppresses credit reporting and no late fees, right? Just some real basic assistance. She said what we were doing as a bank was wonderful, and she was really impressed we took the time to come out to her city when we didn't even have a branch in Texas. We don't have any branches in Texas. She said that if we opened a branch in Texas, she would move her accounts, all of her accounts over, and be solely a U.S. bank person. Talk about the power of human communication. Drives business results. She said she was so grateful for the things we did for her that she wanted to hug us bye and share one more positive word while holding hands with us. Amanda's first question to Ms. Rodriguez was, how did you find out about the event? She pulled up her phone, showed her the email, and said this. Simple, meaningful, clear, human. There's no way that would have happened without the relationships that we as a team had carefully cultivated, both internally and externally, in particular with our print vendor, to make that happen. Questions, comments on that? All right, coming in the home stretch here, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. So, to sum up, no matter where you are in your organization, no matter who you are, what position you hold, whether you are in leadership, I would say everyone's in leadership, but whether you're in management or not, everyone can do the three things that I've mentioned here. And again, just getting started at U.S. Bank. We are just getting started with all of this stuff. But these three things, from my perspective, lay the foundation for future success and keeping the train rolling down the tracks, right? So the first thing is create a culture of belief by bringing positive energy. We talk about the water crystals and how our energy and our intentions can impact the physical world. Powerful stuff. Number two, listen to your employees. If you don't have employees, you can listen to your colleagues or your vendors. They've got ideas. Chances are there's more than one needle in that haystack that's going to help you drive business results. And number three, build and maintain positive relationships. That's the way to do it. That's the way to keep it simple, meaningful, and clear. Human. Starts with you, starts with me, starts with each and every one of us. And I would say, being the hero of customer communications is not about wealth, fame, power, what have you. To me, anyways, it's about how many smiling faces are around you. And again, you don't have to be the guy at the top or the wherever you're at. You don't have to be on the hierarchy. You can do this wherever you're at. If they aren't smiling, then you can ask yourself this question. And I ask myself this question daily. Who am I being that my employees, my colleagues, my boss, my customers' faces aren't smiling? And I want to pose that question to everyone here. It's a tough question, but I think it's good. We're in a contained environment here at a conference, so that when we go back out to the real world, to our jobs, I want everybody to think about that and ask yourself that question, because it's a good reminder. It's an appropriate question, I think, as we're all here, as we're about to go back out into the real world. So it makes a tremendous difference how you carry yourself. Again, this is the fundamental stuff to me. Applies to not just customer communications, but in particular with customer communications. So before I wrap up, I want to share one more story with you. Some of you maybe have seen Benjamin Zander's TED Talk on the transformative power of classical music. Has anybody seen that? A few of you, great, okay. So he tells an amazing story at the end, and it's a story of a woman who went to Auschwitz during World War II when she was 15 years old. and younger brother as well was with her, brother who was 8. And her parents were lost. And in relating her story to him, she said, we were in the train on the way, and I looked down at my brother's feet, and I noticed he didn't have any shoes on, and I yelled at him. I said, "What are you doing? You can't keep track of your stuff. Where are your shoes?" You know, like an older sister might talk to a younger brother. Unfortunately, that was the last thing that she ever said to him, because he did not survive. She never saw him again. And so she said to Benjamin, she said that when she walked out of Auschwitz, she made a vow to herself that I will never say anything to anyone that couldn't stand as the last thing I say to that person. Now, nobody's perfect. We're going to screw it up. I do all the time. I have to ask forgiveness, right? But it's a possibility to live into. Don't you agree? It's a possibility to live into. And so, to close, speaking of possibilities, I want to show you a commercial here, if I can get it pulled up on YouTube. There we go. This is part of our U.S. Bank branding, The Power of Possible.
The difference between possible and impossible is a person who believes they can, surrounded and supported by others, like us, who believe it too. U.S. Bank, the power of possible.
Cancel. I don't know how I get rid of that, but I'll just leave that up there. So it really is possible. Again, the journey is fraught with challenges, with obstacles, but it's absolutely and completely worth it. Our mission at U.S. Bank is helping our customers achieve their possible. In closing, I would just simply ask you, as one communication professional to another, what's your mission? Thank you.